This week, a bug in NVIDIA's Tegra chipset opens doors to malicious code execution. Hackers publish a list of phished Discord credentials. Equifax is set to pay $700 million in a 2017 data breach settlement. Several vulnerabilities found in Comodo Antivirus. And the VLC player has a critical remote code execution flaw with no patch available. In the expert commentary, we welcome Jason Wood to discuss why corporate mobile security just isn't cutting it. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News. This is episode 228 for July 23rd, 2019. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. Quick reminder, we have exciting news about the Security Weekly webcast program. We are now partnered with ISC² as an official CPE provider. If you attend any of our webcasts, you will be receiving 1 CPE credit per webcast. Registering for our upcoming webcasts with ISC² by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. Of course, if you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them on demand at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now, for the security news for the week, a bug in NVIDIA's Tegra chipset has opened a door to malicious code execution. Well, I suppose it's code execution. It's presumptuous to think that it's always malicious. It could be not malicious code anyway. The warning comes from a researcher who discovered the flaw and asserts that the bug affects every single Tegra device released so far. He also created a proof of concept called Self-Blow to exploit the vulnerability. On Thursday, NVIDIA released a patch for the bug titled Marriage. No, it was CVE 2019-5680. The vulnerability is more specifically found in the Tegra system on a chip framework called Jetson TX1L4T, which is also a droid in the upcoming Star Wars movie. I'm just kidding. Used in devices that require low power consumption such as drones and IoT devices. It's unclear exactly how many chips utilize the vulnerable framework. However, researchers said this proof of concept can flash or reprogram the Tegra chips to run the Jetson TX1, significantly enlarging the range of vulnerable devices. Experts have found a critical remote code execution flaw in Palo Alto Networks GlobalProtect, which is their VPN, SSL VPN product, I believe. According to experts at Tenable, analyzing CVE 2019-1579, the issue exists because the gateway doesn't sanitize the value of a particular parameter passed to SNPrintf. More specifically, the researchers state the vulnerability exists because the gateway passes the value of a particular parameter to SNPrintf in an unsanitized and exploitable fashion. Is there any better fashion than unsanitized and exploitable when we're talking about parameters? An unauthenticated attacker could exploit this vulnerability by, of course, sending a specially crafted request to the vulnerable SSL VPN target in order to remotely exploit the code or execute the code on the system, which is pretty much everything I just said in vulnerability speak. Let's see. They reported the flaw to Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto acknowledged the flaw, and they have patches, which is awesome. Hackers published a list of phished Discord credentials. Change your passwords if you think you've been phished, because that's how they got them. Earlier this week, a group of hackers published the list of email addresses and passwords phished from using the gaming chat platform Discord. This list is small, totaling only around 2,500 logins, because it's not a data breach. They had to phish people. But the news still acts as a reminder that Discord users need to remain vigilant for phishing. I would argue every user should remain somewhat vigilant for phishing. It's not a virus. It's not a worm. It's not a malware. It's phishing. Discord's own moronic API they use the Discord's own moronic API to hijack these accounts. That's not what Discord calls their API. That's what the hackers wrote on a message on their website. Cyber threats targeting municipalities are on the rise. The report, based on the global data compiled by AppRiver's cybersecurity team, delves into what is being considered a record year for disruptive attacks that appear to be affecting municipalities at an alarming rate. I'm not sure if this data is specific to the U.S. or not, if it's global, but in 2018, AppRiver analysts stated that they expect to see more disruptive cyber attack events committed by nation states that masquerade as financially motivated attacks. According to the report, it's still up for debate as to who or why these attacks are being launched against local governments, but they could have widespread effects beyond financial damage. For example, malware has the potential to disrupt infrastructure, spread fear and doubt, or otherwise cause discomfort for citizens dependent on city services. I'm not sure, and I didn't read the full report, but I'm not sure how much evidence they have on the attacker's motive, whether it is in fact financial or an attempt by nation states to cause disruptions here in the U.S. I think it definitely has the effect of that causes both, but again, I don't see any heavy evidence to say that they are not financially motivated because, well, one thing is they're asking for money. Several vulnerabilities are found in the Comodo Antivirus software. David Wells, a researcher at Tenable, in the news twice this week with vulnerabilities. They are in the lead for vulnerabilities disclosed this week. They uncovered five types of flaws in the Comodo Antivirus and Comodo Antivirus Advanced. Four of the issues were identified in version 12.0.0.6810. As a side note, I always wondered why we have all these crazy version numbers for software, and then I started releasing things more at a more rapid rate and realized that you need to adjust your version numbers, such as if you're doing a release every day, you don't want version 147,000. In any case, he also uncovered one denial of service bug, which only impacts the version 11.0.06.6582. The most serious of the vulnerabilities with a CVSS score of 6.8 is CVE 2019-3969, which allows an attacker with access to the targeted system to escape the Comodo Antivirus sandbox and escalate privileges to system. Equifax is set to pay up $700 million as part of their data breach settlement. Of course, one of the three largest credit reporting firms in the U.S., again, has to pay $700 million, in case you missed it the first time. Also, that was from a 2017 data breach, in case you missed it the first time. Nearly 150 Americans, almost half the country, were affected, according to an official announcement by the United States Federal Trade Commissioner, FTC. Equifax has agreed to pay at least $575 million in fines, but this penalty could rise up to $700 million, depending on the amount of compensation that people claim. Mozilla is set to add a password manager and a hack alert to Firefox. According to Firefox bug reports and project documentation, Lockwise will automatically record username and password pairs, which sounds alarming when you first read that, but it's storing them in hopefully a secure password manager. They will allow you to generate complex passwords on demand and identify victimized accounts and instruct users to change passwords that have been leaked. The Lockwise monitor combination with Firefox Nightly, which is their nightly release, was put in there free for the users, but we shouldn't be surprised if Mozilla puts a paywall behind it, because Mozilla has made no secret of its desire to boost revenue by selling subscriptions of some sort, probably to individual or a suite of services to amplify the browser. My take on that is security can't be the only thing that gets people to switch to Firefox and actually pay for it. Because if I wanted this functionality, I'd just buy LastPass and put the free add-on for LastPass. Hopefully there's more functionality, and hopefully that includes more secure and security functionality, although you like to think that they make that available for the greater good. A ProFTPD vulnerability can expose servers to attacks. Now, at first glance, I thought this was a throwback to the old school days of remote code execution in FTP servers. Specifically, ProFTPD had some issues in the past that I fondly remember trying to get exploits to compile. But this description made me think differently, as the researchers say the attacks could be made, for example, on open source mirror servers. These have anonymous access enabled, often use ProFTPD, and host a lot of binary files. A malicious actor would need to get his or her malicious file to this machine somehow, maybe by distributing it at some unrelated project, which is also mirrored on the same server, and then override any file on the mirror server with the infected version. This could be used to swap out ISO or exe files where no strict validations like GPG signatures on apt repositories are typically in place. The VLC player has a critical remote code execution flaw with no patch available. So if you're reading this, you just have to try not to get pwned until there's a patch. A remote anonymous attacker can exploit the vulnerability in VLC to execute arbitrary code, create a denial of service condition, or disclose information, or manipulate files, according to German researchers at CertBund. They discovered the vulnerability, and the bug ranks a 9.8 out of 10 on the CVSS scale. Despite the level of severity, no patch is currently available. Videoland did not respond for a request for a comment to Threat Post, who broke the story or provided the story this week. According to the Videoland project, work is being done to create a patch which is about 60% complete. That said, no exploitation of the vulnerability has been observed. We'll take a short break, come back for expert commentary with Jason Wood. Stay tuned. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're still on Hack Naked News, and Jason Wood is still here waiting patiently to talk about why corporate mobile security just isn't cutting it. Jason, welcome.
Hey, Paul. So yeah, I found this article on the RSA conference blog or website today, and I thought it brought up some interesting points for our audience. The post was written by a gentleman named Robert Ackerman Jr., and he takes a position that mobile security is being neglected by companies, which is probably not a huge shock to anybody that listens to this show. But one of the sources he cites is a report by Verizon security team, their Mobile Security Index report for 2019. Now, this was kind of relevant to me because I've done a fair bit of testing on mobile device security and some of the platforms designed to protect data on these systems. So I ended up doing a little bit of digging into this. What the report claims, and certainly some observations I've had in my background, is that companies just aren't doing enough around this. They're neglecting it entirely. Or, in some cases, you do find some companies that are doing a fair bit trying to respond to some of the threats that are out there. So just to run through what some of Mr. Ackerman's article, he cites the claim that from Verizon's report that in the sample of 617 companies that they talked to, 1 in 3 of these organizations reported some kind of breach, in quotes, due to a mobile device. Now, what exactly does it mean, breach? What is the impact of it? And that's not terribly clear from what I was able to find. Maybe this was a simple security incident that was cleared up quickly, or something that became more damaging. Not entirely sure there. Verizon also noted that in these breaches, they tended to occur at companies that, and they quote, failed to meet a basic level of preparedness, end quote. Again, not a particular shock. If you don't make any preparations to protect yourself, then bad things start happening in a hurry.
So Jay, just a quick note. We did have Bob Ackerman on the show. He is a friend of the show. He's one of the partners in Allegis Cyber Capital, and they invest in a company called Moki. The reason I say that, and it's a mobile security company, which is why I wrote this article. The reason I say that, you probably want to look into them because Bob is awesome. They make great choices in cybersecurity companies. And so I love his article and just want to make that note for our listeners. BSW, Business Security Weekly 111, was the interview with Bob.
Very good. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So awesome. Mr. Ackerman goes on to say basically that, when security controls are brought up inside of companies, they tend to think on the side of traditional PCs or perimeter controls. Mobile devices tend to be the last things on people's mind. Again, something that bears out in some of my experience as well. He definitely correctly brings up that a lot of work gets done on mobile devices. I mean, you think about it. Everybody expects to have email, to be able to reply to various things, have some documentation, attachments, things they can toss onto an email because they frequently use that or what have you. And, this happens constantly. If you travel, you watch people as soon as we land, break out their phones and start texting away and sending emails off for all the things that happened.
And it's also very mismanaged, right? Like, I've seen a lot of mobile device management make the user do two-factor authentication just to get into their phone. And I'm like, well, what about just the apps that have access to the corporate data? Like, can't we just protect those? So there's wrong ways to do this and right ways to do this. So
exactly,
Bob's got a point for sure.
Yeah, and certainly I've experienced a lot of organizations that they stick up mobile sync services out there for Exchange or Gmail. They enable that, and that's the end of it.
That's it. That's their mobile support, right? They don't do any, and you can do some checking on the server side too. In some cases, it's so bad that employees of a local company that will remain nameless use a separate device to a cheap tablet or someone's older phone to access their corporate services because the mobile device management is so poorly implemented and gets in the user's way.
Yep. Yeah, I certainly can say that I am very hesitant to hook my phone up to corporate resources for some of the things, the modifications that they will make. And I've tested some that work pretty well, and they don't get in your way terribly badly. I've tested others that are horrendous, and honestly, I've tested some that wouldn't be so bad, but they were just implemented horrendously.
Yeah, you could have great software, right? Was it Mobile Iron? I mentioned Moki, MOKI is one of the Allegis Capital investments, and there's many others. What is I can't think of the other one. Lookout, right? Lookout is a mobile.
You've got Lookout.
Yeah.
Zimperium. Yep. Symantec has their offering. There are a number of these out there, and they're very customizable. They certainly provide you with enough room to shoot yourself in the foot,
right,
or to do something decent. So, again, this very much falls back on us as the people who are managing these and implementing these systems. But those are the organizations that are bothering to implement and purchase and implement those systems at all, which is not.
It's true.
Not in my experience, the majority. So some observations that I had on this. I mean, obviously, Paul and I have already been making our observations on this. First, no one likes carrying two phones around with them. So if you get into a situation where companies are issuing you an authorized device, that gets to be really obnoxious because you're packing around two of these devices. So everybody would rather use their own device for the most part. But now we get into the issues around BYOD. What does the company have access to change on these systems? What can they do if the phone gets lost? Can they delete at least their data off of it? Or do they try, again, badly implemented, go down the path of they're going to wipe the entire device, which is something they don't own? Brings in some issues right there.
There was was it Silent Break or someone? There was a mobile device security company that created a secure sandbox inside of an Android device. I'm saying Silent Break, but I don't think that was it.
I've seen a number of them that have done it.
Yeah.
So I've gone through some bake-offs where, testing where we've been running through 3 different platforms in one go, and all of them had the ability to be implemented and have kind of a sandbox area,
right.
so
like
that when
your
you
corporate
wipe
apps go here, and that's the area that gets wiped, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
And the rest of the device, it's on the user, and that's fine. I'm okay with that for the most part. Again, depending on how it's implemented and how crazy they get with it. So yeah, that helps dodge the issue of wiping data that you don't own. One of the things you want to keep in mind, though, is with these mobile endpoint applications, is they don't have as much control into the devices as you might expect, and like a PC or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The mobile device manufacturers, Apple especially, have gone to great lengths to protect and isolate any application that's going into it, security or not. So you don't end up with a MDM app that's going to be like hooked into the kernel of of iOS or Android or something like that, and able to constantly monitor everything. It gets a little bit more isolated than that, so you don't have all of the functions you might hope for in that. So just kind of be ready for that. They do a good job, in my experience, preventing things from being copied out of the container. Of course, you can still do things like screenshots and nonsense like that, but it makes it less easily usable. One thing to keep in mind, some of the vendors do make some impressive claims about what they can do, and some of them don't exactly mean what you think. So be prepared to do some testing and ask some pointed questions on that. Still, I found in general, these systems give you a good foundation to build on. The point is, I'm agreeing with Mr. Ackerman here, we're not doing enough in mobile security. These are kind of afterthoughts. We don't want to get into the process of managing people's devices, so we stand up some kind of sync service and say, rock on, we're good, everybody work and be happy. And we're kind of hoping on the fact that when something happens, we'll be able to figure out on the fly, which if anybody's been through an incident of any type, that is not the time to figure out things on the fly.
I agree. I feel like there's like a pie chart. I'm not sure how we would slice it, but there's this spectrum that Bob is kind of referencing is, I think, that some people do next to nothing, right? Like you said, they enable the mobile APIs and it's the Wild West. There's the other extreme where they've locked it down so much that it makes it unusable. Somewhere in the middle, there's the concern and maybe hesitation of going from completely open and not a lot of control to some control where you're going to wipe the user's data, right? So that's causing some hesitation in a lot of companies. And I think once you kind of paint that picture, these are a lot of problems that we have that lead to basically this being an exposure that is common across many organizations.
Yeah, and these devices are all over the place. I mean, everybody's hooking. We're expecting them to be able to hook in and get access to data, and our employers are expecting us to do it. That's why they stood this stuff up. So, definitely need to, on the corporate side, we definitely need to have some preparation. Just be prepared. It's going to take some significant time, testing. Be ready to answer some tough questions about what you're willing to do, what your users are willing to accept. To allow you to do to their mobile devices. I've got the links in the show notes here, both to Bob's blog post as well as the articles he references and the Verizon Mobile Security Index report for 2019. Recommend you take a look and maybe take a look at your own organization and what you could do there.
Fantastic. See, Jason, I thought you were going to cover Pampers' first smart diaper, which I thought was a pretty crappy story.
Yes, get ready for IoT diapers, because
That's right.
That one has just hit the news in the last week. Yikes.
I saw it. I almost pissed myself. Anyway, that will conclude this episode of Hack Naked News. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.